How did crabs become so weird? Blue blood, living weapons, and giant claws? A needle penetrates a creature not unlike one that could have crawled right out of the days of the dinosaurs. What comes out is not red, it is bright blue. That lineage extends back some 450 million years. It waded through mass extinctions, continents that came and went, oceans that changed every time. Yet, is horseshoe crab a crab? No. It is more closely related to spiders and scorpions than it is to a true crab. But that blue blood will be important again before this tale is ended, because humans found something inside of it that turned out to be unbelievably handy in medicine. Where true crabs went down a wildly different evolutionary path, and some became enormous. Now try to picture yourselves diving off Japan and spotting a tennis ball-sized orange spider making its way across the seafloor. That's a Japanese spider crab. The body may be only about a foot across, but stretched from claw to claw, a sizable individual can reach almost 12 feet long. That's broader than most rooms. However, this enormous thing isn't duking it out with divers. Transiting deep seafloor habitat in a scavenger mode, finding dead animals and other food it can scavenge, makes up an impressive part of its life. But remove the crab from the water, gravity poses a new problem altogether. The coconut crab is the largest land arthropod alive today, found on tropical islands. They average 9 pounds and are well adapted for terrestrial life. Instead of relying on run-of-the-mill gills like an underwater crab, they utilize highly modified breathing organs, evolutionarily evolved to scrub oxygen out of air. They climb. They tear apart tough food. Unlike their juvenile equivalents, which look like miniature hermit crabs, adults eventually stop toting a shell they borrowed. It has a fortress of its own. Anyway, size is only one of the ways to survive. A boxer crab tries a more eccentric approach. It has a little sea anemone in each claw. Pom-pom, but still, those tentacles can carry stinging cells. The crab uses them in the feeding position and against its opponents during confrontations. But then the scientists came to an even weirder conclusion. A biota ants anemone is divided into 2 pieces when one is taken, and any boxer crabs share the leftover. Each piece regenerates. Then the crab once more has 2 living partners. It is not wearing armor. It is a host that carries organisms capable of replacing themselves. Hit like if that kind of biological teamwork is why you love wildlife. Then the next crab uses its whole environment as a costume. You do not just hide behind seaweed as a decorator crab, it wears it. Its shell had tiny, hooked structures that helped keep bits of algae and other materials collected from the environment. Others intentionally harvest material, glue it to their bodies, and vanish into the scenery. It even grows after it attaches as a form of disguise. Now think for a moment about being the predator probing through a reef. You are looking directly at the crab, but your brain sees debris. The crab is not gone invisible. Evolution hasn't worked out like that. It has made your eyes untrustworthy. Crabs can even deceive another human sense, your ears. Crabs appear to be nearly silent, but crustaceans produce sounds through stridulation, rubbing body parts together. Consider dragging over a rough object over another more rough surface, only smaller, and far more deliberate. Among the range of crab species, these signals have been associated with courtship, competition, and warnings. Ghost and fiddler crabs are just a few examples of those known to employ sound-producing behavior in social interactions. Not all crabs are just waving claws at each other. They are sending messages. But then, of course, the story just gets bigger than the crab. Attention! Snag your keys on the spin of a polychaete in an oyster bar. The mud looks plain until you come across hundreds of holes. Crabs made many of them. Interestingly, every burrow displaces a great deal of sediment, exposing new surfaces into which oxygen from water and air can diffuse. It also enhances movement of oxygen into otherwise inactive mud. Crabs can also shred and eat organic material, forwarding nutrients through the ecosystem, which makes many digging crabs something you might not expect, but who play a surprisingly important role with ecosystem engineers. A crab that weighs just a few ounces can influence the chemistry of the soil in which it digs. And the crab scraping around next to you may have started life a long way from that burrow. People often think a baby crab is just a miniature adult. It often is not. Most crabs hatch as tiny, alien-looking larvae known as Zoea. They swim about in the water column, go through successive molts, stages, and eventually metamorphose into a megalopa, or stage which resembles an early version of the crab it will become. Because of ocean currents, these free-swimming larvae can be taken far from the place where they were hatched. However, they are not always blameless victims. Some animals work the depths of the water, letting different currents and tides determine when they move away from shore or back towards suitable coastal habitat. That journey sets up an astonishing paradox for land crabs. The adults can live almost their entire existences off the water. Their babies cannot. Coconut crabs are also terrestrial. They carry their developing eggs on land and crawl to the ocean just before releasing them. The larvae take marine phase. As young coconut crabs grow, they inhabit empty shells of snails for a short time and move around just like other hermit crabs. Then, their bodies change. This fortifies their abdomen just enough for lasting terrestrial existence. A being likely to drown in more than a few moments if submerged for too long starts its life in the ocean. But that reliance creates a vulnerability no claw can shatter. Crabs need functioning coastlines, mangroves, mudflats, beaches, reefs, sufficiently clean water for the sensitive life history stages. Coconut crabs are currently assessed as vulnerable and threatened in parts of their range by overharvesting, habitat loss, coastal development, invasive species, and road mortality. A strong enough animal to take over an island floor will get bested when the island changes around it. Which leads us to that blue blood again. And also why horseshoe crab blood is blue. Its oxygen-carrying molecule hemocyanin carries copper instead of the iron that we use in our hemoglobin. However, medicine was interested in something else within that hemoglobin. This is because certain types of cells respond very strongly to an endotoxin, a toxic substance from the cell wall of bacteria. That reaction was converted by scientists to the LAL assay, an easy and commonly used way to test medicines and medical devices for potentially dangerous bacterial contamination. Today, you can also get recombinant rubbish from the lab that make it possible to do endotoxin testing without having to depend on all wild horseshoe crab blood. Thus, the weirdest thing about crabs may be not their claws. Legs wider than a car as long grow in. It converts sea anemones into organisms that serve as living devices. Another one does camouflage on its shell. Some communicate through vibrations. Some maintain the mud below entire coastal ecosystems, doing so in silence. And the ancient aristocratic beast that began our journey? And that crab has never actually been a crab at all. This is not nature screwing up. These bodies emerge from a time and place that are markedly different than what we know today. These are responses to predators, gravity, oxygen, food, reproduction, and more. Which crab appears to be the smartest crab in your opinion? The boxer crab, decorator crab, coconut crab, or something else entirely? And subscribe if you want the next part of this tour with animals that look impossible, but once you find out exactly why evolution built them like that,